Not spicy, sir. The voice came before the smell, firm like a drumbeat. Kevin hesitated. He had his phone in hand, reviewing the points for a meeting that would start in 20 minutes, when he turned and found himself face to face with the stand. Small, improvised, decorated with colorful ribbons from Señor de Bonfim. Behind the counter, a woman in a white lace dress, thick necklaces around her neck, and eyes that never left his. "Acarajé without spice isn't acarajé. It's bread with air," she said, already shaping an orange dough with her bare hands. He frowned. He didn't quite get the metaphor, but the tone left no doubt. It was a challenge. "I can pay double," Kevin said, his accent thick, pulling 2 folded bills from his pocket. The woman didn't even look at the money. She kept working the dough like it wasn't even there. Here, money doesn't tell Donde what to do. The smell was strong, enveloping. Hot palm oil, dried shrimp, something that clung to the air like incense smoke. Next to the Bahian woman, another lady was arranging coconut candies on foil trays and laughing, without hiding it. "This one can't even handle the smell of spice," she said, loud enough for him to hear. A few customers in line laughed, complicit. Kevin stood still for a moment. He was sweating. The Bahian heat was relentless. He'd taken off his blazer as soon as he left the hotel, but even so, he felt his shirt sticking to his back. Instinct told him to ignore it and move on, but something about the pride in that woman's stance kept him rooted. "All right. Spicy," he replied. Liz, the handmade name tag on her neck spelled it out in colorful beads, looked over her shoulder at him. A slight lift of the eyebrow. It was as if she was saying, "You sure?" He didn't answer, just stood there. And then she served him. The black-eyed pea fritter, fried in dande oil, was filled with creamy vatapá, plump shrimp, a tangy salad, and of course the pepper. When Kevin received the paper napkin with the steaming acarajé, he hesitated again. The first bite came with surprise. The flavor was intense, but the heat came later, slowly like hidden embers. By the third bite, he coughed. His throat caught fire, and his eyes stung. Sweat poured down his forehead like he'd run a marathon. "Water," he whispered, searching the stand for something. "It's cashew juice or nothing here," Liz said, placing a plastic cup in front of him. Kevin grabbed the juice and drank it in one go. His face was red, his eyes watery. But he didn't stop eating. He kept going until the end. Silence all around. Some people in line had stopped talking to watch. When he handed back the napkin with the remnants of the acarajé, Liz nodded. A small smile appeared on her lips. "Now your visit has officially begun." Kevin took a deep breath. He felt his chest beating harder than usual. And it wasn't just the spice. He was about to thank her and leave, but the Bahian woman turned her back, wiped her hands on a dish towel, and spoke over her shoulder. "If you really want to understand Donde, come have lunch with my family on Sunday." He blinked. "Excuse me?" She turned around, arms crossed. "Sunday, noon. My mother's house. Don't come early or late. If you really want to understand what you just ate, you have to see where the flavor is born." Kevin took a few seconds to process that. He had traveled to Salvador just to assess the purchase of an old colonial house in Pelourinho. The plan was to turn it into a luxury boutique hotel. There was nothing in the itinerary about having lunch with local families, but something in the way she looked at him, without asking, without flattery, without caring who he was. Something in that gaze disarmed all his certainties. "Okay," he said, almost under his breath. Liz smiled just slightly. She didn't thank him or celebrate. She just went back to shaping another acarajé for the next in line. Kevin turned away, still feeling the fire of the spice in his body. The sound of atabaques echoed louder now. A group of young people passed by wearing white clothes and carrying drums, singing a song he didn't understand, but could feel in his chest. On the hill, the colorful facades of the colonial houses seemed to watch everything with ancient eyes. The sky was already beginning to tint orange. Pelourinho, with its smells, sounds, and textures, wasn't just a backdrop, it was a living entity, pulsing. And he, coming from Manhattan, from glass-walled offices, silent meetings, and sugarless coffee, was, without realizing it, stepping into another world. On the way back to the hotel, he could still feel the pepper on his lips. Strangely, it made him smile. The gate creaked loudly as Kevin pushed it open slowly, still unsure if he was in the right place. Inside, a wide yard with a cement floor and large fern pots hanging from makeshift clotheslines. Barefoot children ran around laughing, weaving past a long table covered with a plastic tablecloth printed with red flowers. The smell was strong, coming from the back of the house. Dunday oil, sautéed garlic, something with shrimp. "He's here!" one of the kids shouted, not knowing his name but pointing as if announcing someone important. Within seconds, Liz appeared at the kitchen door. She looked different. The white outfit had been replaced by a loose navy blue dress with small embroidered sleeves. Her hair was tied in a quick bun, a few strands stuck to her forehead from the heat. "I thought you were going to bail," she said bluntly, that same mix of challenge and humor in her tone. Kevin gave a sideways smile. "I promised I'd come." "Well then come in, right? Don't just stand there like a lamppost." He stepped inside. The first thing he noticed was the table. It was set with more food than he thought possible in a regular home. Clay pots, stainless steel trays, glass bowls. Rice, beans, farofa, vatapá, moqueca, green bean salad, smaller crunchy acarajés, round fritters he couldn't name. And the smell. It was as if the kitchen had a soul. An older woman approached, wiping her hands on an apron. She had Liz's eyes, only deeper, more worn, black skin marked by expression lines. It was her mother. "Welcome, son. This is a people's house. No need to take off your shoes, but do take that fear off your face," she said, giving him 2 quick pats on the shoulder. Kevin thanked her, unsure how to respond. He sat at the corner of the table, trying to take up as little space as possible, while the others continued arriving. Siblings, uncles, neighbors, friends. It was hard to tell who was related to whom. The children ran by, grabbed a piece of cake and dashed off again. No one asked for permission. No one seemed awkward about his presence. "He already ate spicy donde and survived," said Rosa, appearing out of nowhere with a plate in her hands. "He's halfway Bahian already." Laughter all around. Liz smiled subtly and sat across the table. "Eat, Kevin. If the plate stays empty, we'll think you didn't like it." He nodded and began serving himself, slowly without overdoing it. He tried the moqueca first, then the vatapá, then the rice and beans. The food had layers. It wasn't just flavor. It was history. There was a kind of seasoning he couldn't name, something between affection and time. As he chewed slowly, he looked around. The walls were covered in old paintings, family photos, yellowed newspaper clippings. A radio played softly in the corner of the room, an old song, a woman's voice, dragging and nostalgic. On top of a cabinet, a vase with colorful ribbons tied to a dry branch. For a moment, something felt familiar. "What is it?" Liz asked, noticing his distant gaze. He hesitated. "This smell reminds me of something. I lived in Texas for a while, when I was a teenager. I remember a street fair in San Antonio once. There was a food stand, spicy stuff. I think it was Mexican. I remember the heat of the pepper and the good kind of chaos." Liz kept looking at him silently. The sound of spoons hitting pans filled the space again. "My parents died when I was 12, he continued, not sure why he was sharing. After that, everything turned into protocol. Uncles' houses, then boarding school. Meals were quiet, rigid. This kind of chaos here. It catches me off guard." She didn't say anything, just pulled over a dish and served him more vatapá without asking. Rosa, sitting nearby, looked at his plate, then at him and said, "See? Here a plate only stays empty if the heart does too." Laughter again, but this time Kevin laughed with them, a short, restrained laugh, but genuine. "What do you do again?" asked one of the men, refilling his glass with cashew juice. "Investments, finance, Wall Street." "Ah," the man replied, clearly unimpressed. "So you deal with numbers." Kevin nodded. "And now you're dealing with Dende," Liz added, teasing him. "Might be more profitable than stocks if done right," he replied, playing along. The afternoon passed slowly. After the meal came sliced fruit, fresh brewed coffee, cassava cake. The children played in the yard. Someone turned on the old TV and found a soccer game. The women chatted about last night's soap opera. The men debated whether it would rain on Monday. Kevin just sat there, watching it all. No one treated him like a millionaire or a foreigner. He was just another person. At one point, Liz got up and started clearing the dishes. He followed her to the kitchen to help. Inside, it was even hotter, but there was a calmness in the air. Liz washed the plates in silence, and Kevin dried. They didn't look at each other, but something hung in the space between them. An invisible thread stretched between small gestures. "You weren't expecting this, were you?" she said, breaking the silence. "No, not at all." "What did you think it would be?" "A quick chat, maybe. A plate of food and goodbye. But there's something here that's hard to explain." "Then don't explain it. Eat, listen, stay quiet. Bahia doesn't come through logic. It gets in through your skin." Kevin looked at her, and for the first time since arriving in the city, allowed himself not to understand, just to feel. He let Bahia in, through the smell, the sound, the texture of soapy water on his fingers, through the nearness of a woman who fried acarajés as if performing a ritual. When he returned to the hotel hours later, the silence of the luxury suite bothered him, the absence of voices, of smells, of life. He took off his jacket, dropped it over a chair, and sat out on the balcony. Down below, Salvador still pulsed with energy. The distant sound of atabaques echoed like a reminder. He still didn't know what it all meant, but he was certain that what he'd experienced at that lunch didn't fit into spreadsheets or forecasts. It was a different kind of investment. And strangely, he was starting to feel ready for it. "I've got a proposal," Kevin said, handing Liz a brown envelope. She dried her hands on a dish towel tied around her waist and looked at him calmly, like someone in no rush to deal with numbers. "What kind of proposal?" "A business one, investment," he replied firmly, just as he would in boardrooms with CEOs across the world. Liz opened the envelope, pulled out the printed pages, and glanced through them. The content was in Portuguese, with an English translation beside it. Kevin's work with one of the local attorneys. There were charts, growth projections, profit margins, and a detailed plan to expand the stand to 2 strategic locations in Salvador, maintaining its original identity with modern touches. "You want to buy my stand?" she asked, without taking her eyes off the paper. "Not exactly buy. I want to invest. Have a percentage. Help expand. With the tourist flow growing, there's potential. The brand can go beyond this hill, Liz. It could become a franchise. You'd still have autonomy. I'd only bring in structure and capital." Liz lifted her eyes and stared at Kevin for several long seconds. The sound of the aluminum pot boiling behind her kept time with the tension. It was still morning, few customers around. The shadow of the awning flickered in the breeze. "The one who controls the recipe is the hand that learned with love," she said, folding the paper and handing the envelope back, without opening the other attachments. Kevin frowned, confused. "Liz, this is a real opportunity. You could scale production, hire people, still maintain quality control, but with more reach. More people experiencing your work. It's not work, it's a craft." She took the towel from her shoulder and hung it back on a hook at the stand. "And I don't want to reach the world. I want to reach the people who come by here, hungry and respectful. You're being emotional, and you're being blind." Silence fell between them. A man approached the stand and asked for an acarajé. Liz served him as usual without breaking eye contact. Kevin stood there waiting as if hoping for another shot, but she didn't return to the subject. After a few minutes, he stepped back. "All right. Sorry for making the offer. No need to apologize for wanting to help. Just don't forget, not everything that looks like help is truly help." Kevin nodded slowly. He placed the envelope back in his folder and walked off, looking around as if unsure where to go next. Back at the hotel, he spent hours in silence, sitting in front of his laptop, not touching the keyboard. The spreadsheets open on the screen felt pointless. The blinking cursor in the corner mocked the lack of control he felt. For the first time in years, one of his proposals had been turned down, not because of math or distrust, but because of a principle he couldn't fully grasp. Later in the afternoon, Rosa showed up at the stand with a basket of coconut candies and approached Liz as she was closing up for the day. "So? You said no?" "I did." "Was he upset?" "Seemed like it." Rosa leaned the basket against the side of the stand and crossed her arms. "I think he's really interested, you know." "Interested in what, the stand?" Liz raised an eyebrow. "The stand, the dende. Who knows, but listen, when a man keeps coming back for the pepper, it's not just curiosity, it's 'cause he wants another taste." Liz didn't laugh. She just looked down into the pot, where remnants of acarajé batter still clung to the bottom. "He's the kind who shows up with everything figured out, Rosa. Doesn't know how to make space. Or maybe he's trying to learn." Night fell over Pelourinho with its familiar blend of sounds. Music spilling from bars, a tambourine circle somewhere in the square, voices echoing down the alleys. Liz ended her day as always, carefully cleaning the stand, storing the leftover ingredients, and saying a quiet prayer in front of a small altar behind the counter. On it, old photos of her grandmother and mother, women who had also sold acarajé in that same spot before her. On the hotel balcony, Kevin watched the city light up. The rejected proposal still weighed on his mind. But more than that, Liz's steady gaze lingered. The way she turned down his offer, not with anger, but with dignity. It was as if she'd said, "I know what this is worth, and it's not what you think." He stood up, closed the laptop, and stared into the dark bottom of the whiskey glass in his hand. For the first time, the drink didn't bring comfort. It just filled the emptiness. The next day, he avoided walking past the stand. He wandered through other neighborhoods, visited the colonial house under renovation with the realtor, tried to focus on the numbers, but everything seemed to have lost a bit of meaning. The city, once exotic and vibrant, now touched him differently, slower, deeper, more human. And deep down, he knew, it wasn't about the investment. It was about control. And maybe, for the first time, he was starting to learn how to live without it. "Well, you gonna learn how to peel beans or not?" Liz asked, hands on her hips, feet planted firmly on the hard-packed dirt of the yard. Kevin, with a sack of black-eyed peas in his lap, stared at the bucket of water in front of him like it was a puzzle. He sat on a crooked wooden stool, trying to figure out where to begin. "You want me to peel them one by one?" he asked, frowning. "No, I want you to talk to them until they come out on their own," Rosa replied, already peeling for minutes without even looking at him. "So of course it's one by one, gringo." Kevin huffed, rolled up his sleeves and plunged his hands into the water. The beans were slippery and the skins didn't come off easily. Liz crouched next to him, scooped up a handful with both hands and showed him. "Press gently like this and rub. The skin will start to loosen. It's about patience and rhythm, no force. If you push too hard, you ruin the bean." He tried to copy her, but his fingers were too heavy, more strength than finesse. Some beans split in half, others shot out of his hands like fish. Liz shook her head. "Looks like your button-pressing, contract-signing life doesn't help you here." "Are you firing me?" he asked, looking up with a tired smile. "Not yet, but you're on probation." The yard buzzed with activity. It was the day of the neighborhood's community festival, and Liz had promised to deliver 100 acarajes for the event. A few neighbors were helping with the prep, but she insisted Kevin go through the entire process, from the base up. He spent hours there, hands wrinkled in warm water, peeling beans, rubbing, discarding the damaged ones. Around him, voices, running kids, laughter, and a radio playing Axé at a moderate volume. The sun was strong, but he barely felt it anymore. Time moved at its own pace in that yard. When the bowl was finally full of peeled beans, Liz grabbed a spoon and stirred the batter in a larger container. Kevin watched her movements closely. There was no written recipe. Everything was by feel, by body memory, yet each gesture was precise to the millimeter. "My mum taught me this, and she learned it from her mum. Every spoonful carries a story. And you never thought of writing it down, turning it into a course or something? Documenting it? For what? To turn it into a manual? This isn't a formula, it's a bond." Kevin fell silent. For the first time, he understood that what she did wasn't just cooking, it was preservation, a bridge between times, between generations. "Grab those ribbons," Liz said, pointing to a basket filled with colorful Seigneur de Bonfim ribbons. He did. The ribbons were tangled, but each one had a different color and a wish. "Tie one on the wrist of everyone who comes for Akaraje. 3 knots, 3 wishes. And don't take it off until it falls off on its own. And if it doesn't fall off, then the wish is still being worked on." She smiled. Kevin chuckled too, still a little skeptical, but intrigued by the symbolism. By late afternoon, hands smelling of garlic and dande, he helped carry trays of Akaraje to Largo do Pelourinho, where the festival would take place. Colorful stalls, loud music, clowns, cultural performances, and people. Lots of people. Liz wore a white lace outfit with a flowing skirt and a head wrap. She was at the heart of it all, greeting people, smiling, handing out the sacred fritters with the dignity of someone carrying on a tradition. Kevin watched from a distance, like someone witnessing a stage where the lead actress also directs, writes, and builds the set. It was hard to look away from her. "Bold gringo, huh?" Liz said suddenly beside him, still looking out at the crowd. "Is that good or bad?" "Depends. Some gringos show up and think everything here is exotic fun. They stay a few days, take pictures, eat and go home saying they've been transformed. And me? You're sweaty, you reek of dande, and you're smiling without even noticing. You're on the right path." They laughed. The sound of a samba circle echoed through the square. Tambourines and panderos inviting people to dance. Children spun hand in hand, elders clapped. A few tourists tried to mimic the steps. Kevin and Liz drifted away from the center, walking slowly along the cobbled streets. They passed colorful walls, graffiti, closed shops, sweet smells wafting from bakeries. "When I first got here, I thought it was all chaos," he said. "Noise, confusion, lack of control. But now, it feels like there's an invisible order to everything. That's because you're starting to listen. When you really listen, you feel the rhythm." "You think I'm one of those tourists who'll go back saying they were changed?" Liz stopped and looked at him. Her eyes were softer now, less guarded. "I think you're still deciding whether you're going to leave." Silence. Just the sound of samba echoing in the background. "Aren't you afraid of getting attached?" he asked almost in a whisper. "No. I'm afraid of letting go of what holds me up. What I cling to is my roots. People who live off the wind don't last a season." They walked a few more steps, the stones slick from the city's sweat, the lamplight reflecting off old windows. Kevin glanced sideways at her. Liz still walked with firm steps, like she knew every inch of that place. He wanted to ask more, but couldn't find words that didn't feel too small. They stopped at the top of a staircase overlooking the sea. Down below, the lights of boats flickered like fireflies in the dark. "I don't know what's happening to me," he said at last. "Me neither," Liz replied with a gentle smile. "But if you're still trying to understand, it means it's not over yet." Their gaze held longer than necessary. No rush, no looking away. Kevin felt the air lighten, his body tired but strangely alive. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't thinking about tomorrow. There on that old staircase, with the distant sound of samba and the lingering scent still clinging to his skin, he just wanted to be where he was, and with who he was. "Did you hear what they were saying in line today?" Rosa asked quietly but directly, as she stacked the still-warm coconut candies on a banana leaf. Liz paused in the middle of tying the scarf on her head and glanced sideways. "What now?" "That you're changing how you make akaraje just to please a gringo." The comment hung in the air for a few seconds. Liz didn't respond right away. She finished adjusting the scarf, took a deep breath, and went back to stirring the bean batter. The smell of grated onion and fresh garlic was beginning to spread. It was early morning and things were still calm, but even so, the words carried weight, the kind that doesn't need a crowd to cause damage. "Who said that?" she asked at last. "A young woman who showed up yesterday. She was with 2 friends. One of them said she saw the gringo helping at the festival, and the other said everything's turning into a tourist attraction now. That you're selling out." Liz closed her eyes for a second. Not out of anger, but like someone swallowing something bitter. She wiped her hand on a dish towel and looked out toward the hill, which was still slowly waking up. They don't understand that I haven't changed anything. What's changed is how they look at it. You know how people are around here, anything that looks different from the usual and the gossip starts. And with the gringo always by your side, people make up stories. It's always easier to point than to ask. And you gonna talk to him? Liz didn't answer. She just stirred the batter harder, as if the words were hidden among the crushed beans, waiting for the right moment to come out. Later that day, toward the evening, Kevin showed up, like he'd been doing nearly every day since that lunch at her mother's house. He had a cloth bag slung over his shoulder and a restrained smile on his face. "Brought more Seigneur du Bonfim ribbons," he said, raising the bag. Liz didn't respond immediately. She kept flipping the acarages in the pan with an aluminum skimmer, her eyes fixed on the bubbling oil. "Liz?" She turned slowly. Her face wasn't hostile, but it didn't have the warmth of previous days either. "You know people are saying I changed my dande because of you." Kevin frowned. "What do you mean? They're saying I'm dressing up what used to be simple. That now the acarage comes with a gringo on the side and an accent in the background. But that's ridiculous. You haven't changed anything. I'm just here, learning." "Yeah, but even your presence becomes a headline in people's mouths." Kevin took a step back, the smile fading. "Liz, I never meant to interfere. I got involved because I thought I was helping. I thought I was adding something." "Well, even help, when it leaves too many footprints, becomes noise." The silence between them lasted longer this time. The sound of distant drums echoed, mixed with children's laughter and the movement on the hill. "You want me to stop coming?" he asked quietly. "I want you to understand that here, silence weighs more than noise, and when people start talking too much, it means the soul of the thing is being questioned." Kevin nodded slowly, not hiding the hurt. "All right, I'll give it some space." He turned without ceremony and walked down the hill, the uneven stones echoing beneath his hurried steps. Liz watched him until he disappeared around the corner. Then she went back to flipping the acarages, but her hands no longer moved with the same steadiness. In the days that followed, he didn't show up. Not in the morning, not in the afternoon, not at the end of the day. Rosa commented without asking, "He really vanished, huh?" "I asked him to stay away." "Did you ask, or did you push?" Liz didn't answer. She kept crushing garlic with coarse salt in the mortar. His absence left a space in the air, like a pot out of place, like a scent you got used to and suddenly it's gone. Across the city, Kevin tried to return to his routine of meetings, spreadsheets and calculations. But each email reply felt mechanical. Every call from New York sounded too far away. The colonial house in Pelourinho was still under evaluation, with architects sending renderings and renovation suggestions. But the excitement was gone. What once made him feel alive now seemed colorless. He started going out more at night, away from the center. He avoided the hills near Liz's stand. He visited quieter beaches, slower neighborhoods, but everywhere he went, something reminded him of her. A smell, a sound, a color. Meanwhile, the gossip continued. Some customers asked, feigning curiosity, "So where's your American partner?" Others said, "Good, it's going back to how it used to be. The food had changed, you know." Liz listened in silence, but inside the discomfort grew, because she knew she hadn't changed anything. Everything was the same, ingredients, preparation, the love poured into it. What had changed was her heart, and no one saw that. Or worse, no one accepted it. One night, as she was closing the stand, she stood still in front of the small makeshift altar. Colorful ribbons, the image of Seigneur du Bonfim, and a photo of her mother smiling with a tray balanced on her head. "Tell me, Mom, is it okay for the heart to want what tradition doesn't have room for?" The breeze blew gently, and the scent of dende still clinging to her clothes rose like a reminder. The sacred, too, can change. But for now, she stayed silent. Because sometimes love means stepping away, even when everything inside you begs to do the opposite. "Did you see this?" Rosa walked into the stand with the folded newspaper in her hands, eyes wide, face serious. Liz turned slowly, still holding the skimmer, and wiped the sweat from her forehead with her forearm. What now? The city find your stand, Liz. It's right here. Look. Rosa opened the paper and pointed to a footnote, small but clear. Inspection finds street food vendor in Pellerino for sanitation documentation issues and obstruction of public space. Silence fell for a moment. Liz read the note once, twice, as if she didn't want to believe it. Then she looked around at her own stand. The same as always. The patched-up awning, the altar, the same uneven ground where she'd been working for years. They never bothered me before, she muttered. Well, they did now. And look at the date. The fine was issued yesterday. Did you see any inspectors? No one came by, no one said anything. Just this in the paper. I heard they've been cracking down in some areas, but you, now. Liz slowly set the skimmer down, ran her hands over her face and took a deep breath. The smell of Donde, usually part of her, suddenly felt suffocating. Word spread quickly among the neighbors. Some whispered, others approached to ask if it was true. Customers came by and looked around with suspicion, as if a single scrap of newsprint had tainted years of work. Is it because of the gringo? Someone asked, not even trying to hide the judgment. Liz didn't respond. She just kept serving acarajés, one by one, with the same steadiness as always, as if that could silence the rumors. But inside, she was unsettled. That same afternoon, Kevin was in the hotel lobby, waiting for a taxi to take him to a meeting with the engineers working on the colonial house. An older woman sat beside him, flipping through a local newspaper. Suddenly, he saw Liz's name on the page she was folding over her lap. He read the note quickly, eyes scanning the words. Fine, irregularity, stand in Pellerino. His stomach dropped. Without a second thought, he cancelled the meeting, went up to his room, opened his laptop and started making calls. He used the realtor's contact to connect with a local attorney, who connected him with someone at City Hall. Within hours, he had digital copies of the documents. Liz's stand had been registered for years, but the health permit required annual renewal, and it had expired months ago. She probably didn't even know. A stricter inspection process, triggered by rising tourism, had set it off. I want to get everything regularized under her name, and pay the fine, Kevin said directly. But Mr. Morfoy, this isn't something you do under the table. There's a process, the lawyer replied. Then start the process today, tomorrow, now. I'll sign whatever's needed. And don't tell her it was me. The lawyer hesitated but agreed. Within 2 days, the paperwork was filed, the fine paid and the license renewed for another year. All under Liz's name, with no mention of Kevin. At least, that was the plan. But small towns talk. And Salvador, for all its size, has its invisible corridors of information. On the 4th day after the article was published, Liz received an official envelope from City Hall with the new permit. Inside, a handwritten note read, "Documentation processed as requested. Thank you for your cooperation." She found it odd. Read the note again and again. No signature, but something about the formal tone mixed with personal phrasing didn't sit right. She picked up her phone, hesitated, then walked to the public phone booth in the square, the one she used when she wanted to handle things privately. "Rosa, watch the stand for a bit. I need to check on something." Minutes later, she arrived at the hotel. She asked at the front desk for Kevin's full name. They told her he was in a meeting but allowed her to go up and wait in the lounge on his floor. He arrived half an hour later, surprised to see her sitting there, arms crossed, envelope in her lap. "Hey, are you okay?" She stood slowly, without answering, held out the paper. "This have your hand in it, Kevin." He looked at it, swallowed hard. He'd known she would find out, sooner or later. "I just wanted to help," he said softly. "Without telling me. You were being penalized over a technicality. I had access. I did it because it was the right thing." "Right for who? For you?" Kevin took a breath, stepped closer, but she didn't step back. "I thought I was doing something good. I swear. I didn't mean any disrespect. I didn't put my name on anything. I didn't advertise. I just sped things up. That's what you don't understand, Kevin. Everything you touch shifts tone, even when your intentions are good." You would have preferred to lose the license? I would have preferred to have the choice, to be told, to be included. Silence fell between them. Outside, the sound of honking and street vendors. Inside, just the muffled hum of the air conditioner. "I'm sorry," he said genuinely. "I didn't mean to overstep. I just thought you were being wronged." "And I was. But you don't fix injustice with shortcuts. You fix it with respect." Liz turned to leave. But before she walked away, she looked over her shoulder. "Next time you want to help me, start by asking if I want it." And she left, Kevin still standing there, the renewed permit in his hands and the weight of his own actions on his shoulders. Down the hill, the sound of drums echoed again as if nothing had happened. But inside Liz, everything had already changed. "Liz, look at this." Rosa came running into the kitchen, phone in hand, her hair tied back with a yellow scarf and her hands still covered in flour. Liz turned around, wooden spoon still dipped into the vatapá. "What is it now, Rosa?" "Big order, 100 akarajes, 50 abaras, farofa, vatapá and sauce. All for Sunday. It's for a cultural center event right here in Pelourinho. They said it's the biggest samba circle of the year." Liz paused for a second, looked at the clock on the wall. It was Thursday. Not much time. 100 akarajes? 100, girl, plus everything else. It's a serious order. "And you already accepted?" "I did. Told them if you didn't want to do it, I'd find a way. But I know how your mind works. You're gonna want to do it." Liz didn't respond. She grabbed a dish towel and dried her hands. She knew that order could be important, not just for the money, but because it came at a sensitive moment, with her name still floating in the midst of rumors. Delivering that order flawlessly was more than just work. It was redemption. It was affirmation. "Then we're gonna need everything fresh. Beans, shrimp, oil. I need to ask my aunt if she still has that big pot. And you, Rosa, check with your nieces, see if they can help roll the banana leaves. Leave it to me, but it's going to be work. And they're saying it might rain Saturday night." Liz let out a long sigh. "Let it rain. We'll fry underwater if we have to." By Saturday afternoon, the kitchen was a beautiful mess. Pressure cookers whistling, the strong scent of onions and donde filling the hallway, people going back and forth with bowls, bags, wooden spoons, and baskets of leaves. Kevin showed up at the door in the middle of the chaos. He wore a simple t-shirt, linen pants and sandals. He no longer looked like the executive from the early days. "I came to help," he said plainly, wiping sweat from his brow. Liz stopped what she was doing and looked at him. There was something in his tone, a calm firmness without pressure. "You still remember how to peel beans?" "Kind of, but I can relearn." She pointed to the bowl in the corner of the yard. He went without complaining. The sky was already overcast, the air heavy. The forecast hadn't lied. Around 5 in the afternoon, the first drops began to fall, light at first, then heavier, rhythmic. Liz rushed to cover the ingredients, while Rosa threw a tarp over the makeshift stand. Kevin got soaked dragging crates and containers into the covered porch. "It's all gonna get drenched," Rosa shouted, stacking pots in the corner. "No, it's not. We won't let it," Kevin answered firmly, covering the dough table with a sheet of plastic. The rain picked up. The wind blew hard. One of the tarps tore, dumping water over the prep station. Liz ran, grabbed buckets, helped Kevin secure the fabric again. Their clothes clung to their skin. Their feet sank into the muddy yard, but no one stopped. Through the night, the lights flickered on and off. The storm's roar mixed with calls of urgency. "Hold this! Cover the vatapá! Get the fritters out of the oil!" Kevin never left Liz's side. He spent the entire night frying acarajé. He turned the fritters carefully, dropped in the next batch, tested the oil's temperature with a bit of onion, just like Liz had taught him. Her eyes followed his movements. Between one batch and the next, between one thunderclap and another, between exhaustion and focus, something shifted. "You don't have to be here," she said during a quick pause. "But I want to be," he replied, steady. "If I start something, I stay until the end." She didn't respond, just kept going. But deep down that phrase lingered. Stay until the end. No one had said that to her in a long time. Fewer still had proven it with a soaked body, red eyes from lack of sleep, and sore arms from hours of mixing batter. Morning broke still grey, but the rain had let up. The clouds slowly pulled back like heavy curtains. By 9 in the morning, the akarajes were ready. 100. All the same, piping hot, stuffed, wrapped in paper towels and packed in boxes. The abaras too. The sauces, the farofas, the vatapa, everything packed, labelled, organised. Liz looked over every detail. It felt like seeing a finished work of art. "I never thought you'd stay until the end," she said in a near whisper, looking at him. Kevin smiled, eyes tired but bright. "I didn't know I could either, but now I understand why it's worth it." The truck that would take the food to the event arrived minutes later. Everything was loaded with care. The neighbors who helped got their treats as payment. Smiles, hugs, promises of more parties. When everything was in the truck, Kevin walked up to Liz. "Can I come with you to the event?" She looked at him, no rush, then nodded. "You can, but keep an eye out so you don't sneak a fritter on the way." "I promise." And they laughed, like they hadn't in days. The morning continued, the ground still wet, the smell of dawn day clinging to everything, clothes, hair, hands. But there, between empty pots and packed boxes, was a new kind of warmth. Not the heat of boiling oil, the warmth of something beginning to change. "Got the last tray," Kevin said, out of breath, leaning his arm on the back of the truck as the helper closed the hatch. Liz nodded and wiped her face with a dish towel. She was exhausted, hair stuck to her forehead, feet aching, shoulders tight, but with a calm look, the kind that comes from knowing you've done what needed to be done. The event was already underway in the square. The samba de roda setting the rhythm in the background, and the food stalls coming to life. Children ran by with colorful ribbons in their hair. Women in flowing skirts danced around the circle, and the scent of freshly fried dande oil mingled with flowers and damp earth. "You should sit for a bit," Kevin suggested, watching Liz arrange the containers on the quickly assembled counter. "Not yet. Still need to set up the juice bottles and the dried shrimp." "I'll do it." She hesitated, then handed him the bottles without a word. They worked together until every last detail was ready. When the first customer arrived, Liz served them herself. She looked the man in the eyes, tied a ribbon around his wrist, served the akaraje with hands still warm from frying, and said, "May your 3 wishes come slowly, but come strong." Kevin stood beside her just watching. There was no romanticism in it. It was devotion. Every word said with intention, every fritter handed over with a story. As the hours passed, the stand became surrounded with people. The line grew, but no one complained. There was something more than food being served. The kind of thing you don't find in recipes or menus. Hours later, near the end of the day, with the sun setting on the horizon and the sky turning shades of orange and lavender, Liz handed out the last akaraje. Rosa showed up right after with 2 cups of cold cashew juice. That's it. Not even leftovers to bring home. Liz took the cup and leaned against the counter. "It was beautiful, wasn't it?" "It was more than beautiful," Rosa replied, casting a side glance at Kevin with a knowing smirk. "It was whole." The music was winding down. The square now carried that soft exhaustion that lingers after a celebration, warm and slow. "Come on," Liz said, looking at Kevin. "Let's go somewhere." "Where?" "To see Salvador from above. I haven't taken you there yet." They walked together unhurried along Pelourinho's cobblestone streets. The shops were closing, the musicians packing up, the last rounds of applause echoing through the alleys. They reached the La Cerda elevator just as the sky turned dark. The city below began to light up. The boat lights, the car headlights, the old lampposts. The reflection from windows shimmered on the waters of the Bay of All Saints. "This is where I breathe," Liz said, stopping near the railing. Kevin stood beside her in silence. "When I was little, my mum used to bring me here. She'd say, 'Look closely, daughter. This city is like akaraje. Some people just smell it and leave. But those who take a real bite never forget it.' And you, did you take a real bite?" "I'm still chewing." Kevin smiled. They stood in silence for a few seconds, watching the movement of the city below. No rush. No need to fill the moment with words. Maybe you've come to understand the true value of dende, Liz said suddenly. Kevin turned slowly toward her. I've learned that some riches don't fit on a stock exchange. She gave him that half smile that usually came before a teasing remark, but this time she said nothing. She simply pulled a blue Seigneur de Bonfim ribbon from her dress pocket. Give me your arm. Kevin held out his arm, and she tied the ribbon carefully. 3 knots, one by one. 3 wishes, 3 commitments. But you don't say them out loud, just think them, and let Bahia handle the rest. Kevin closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, she was still there, her fingers gently resting on his skin. Now you've got a piece of Bahia with you, Liz said, releasing his arm. I think it's more than just a piece. She turned and began walking slowly down the elevator stairs. Kevin followed. They stopped halfway in front of a small stand that was still open. 2 older women were selling the last acarages of the night. Want to split one? Liz asked. I thought you'd be sick of them by now. Dende? Never. They bought just one. She took the first bite, then handed it to him. Kevin took a bite and wiped the corner of his mouth with his hand. Does it have pepper? Always. They laughed. And for a few seconds they just stood there. No destination, no plan, simply there, eating acarajé while the sound of atabaques began once again to echo in the distance. Hear what it meant to you. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. This is really important for the channel. Really important. And if you're ready for another story of love and hope, click the first card or the second one to watch the full playlist. See you there.